and welcome back to Diamond Delight Edibles. My name is Liz if this is the first time you're joining, and if you're a regular, welcome back. So today I am going to show you how to make these awesome Jolly Rancher gummies from actual Jolly Ranchers. That's right. So I make these with Canna syrup. You can also do them with the Canna sugar. If you want to know how to make those, I do have videos. They're made from tinctures. There is a specific one, Canna sugar, and then the other one for the Canna syrup is Canna flour, powdered sugar, and syrup. And that will show you how to make the syrup if you'd like. So from the actual gummy, or from Jolly Ranchers, I've made these gummies, and I'm going to show you just how to do that. So as usual, I'm going to jump right into those ingredients and what we need to put that together, get it all put together for you so you can make these awesome candies. Oh, one thing I did want to tell you. So in the recipe, I used 3.5 tablespoons of unflavored gelatin. I would recommend using 4 tablespoons of unflavored gelatin to the same 3/4 cups of liquid. So I will put the correction in the ingredients in the comments. They turned out a little bit softer than probably what I like, so I would go with 4 tablespoons of the unflavored gelatin. All right, so now we'll jump into those ingredients and get right to her. Alrighty, so for our Jolly Rancher gummies, what we're going to need is about 20 of your preferred flavor of Jolly Rancher. So I'm going to use the blue raspberry. And peeled, of course, take off the wrappings. You're going to need 1/4 cup of Canna syrup that we're going to mix with this. Then for our candy syrup, we are going to need 1 cup of white sugar, regular sugar, and 1/4 cup of Canna syrup, and 1/4 cup of regular light corn syrup, 1/2 teaspoon of citric acid, and 1/4 cup of water for our syrup. Then we're going to need 3.5 tablespoons to 4. So if you've got the packages of the Knox gelatin, you can just use the 4 pack. Just take out a little bit off one, you'll be good. And 3/4 cup of water for your gelatin, cold. It needs to be very cold. And then for our equipment, we are going to need a candy thermometer, a double boiler. If you don't have a double boiler, just use a pot where another heat-safe bowl will fit on top, and that will suffice. Another pot for your candy syrup, a couple of spatulas, and then your bottles, if you've got the bottles for dispensing your syrup. If you don't have these, guys, these are great things. If not, you can just use your eyedroppers. You've got those, and of course your molds. And that's everything we need to get started. So let's jump right in and get it going. All right, so our very first step we want to do is bloom our gelatin. So you are going to take your 3.5 tablespoons and you're going to sprinkle it over your liquid. You want to kind of get it all mixed around. And then you're going to mix this in, your gelatin into your liquid, so you don't have any lumps. And while you're mixing this is a good hint to know whether your gelatin is a good strength or that it's not too old. While you're mixing this, it should already start to gel. And while you're mixing it, it should get turned to about the consistency of applesauce. And that's how you know your gelatin is good. And then we're going to just put that aside to bloom for till we're ready, till we need it. Now, we are going to melt our Jolly Ranchers and our corn syrup. So we are going to melt our Jolly Ranchers and 1/4 cup of our corn syrup all on our double boiler. Just don't forget to put water in your bottom of your double boiler. I've done it. Well, it helps if I plug it in. Hold on. All right, so we're going to turn our heat on to medium or medium high. And we're going to get our candy. Put your Jolly Ranchers into the pot. Mine got a little stuck in the bowl here. Gotta love humidity. These two don't want to give it up. Oh, gotcha. And we're going to put in our 1/4 cup of corn syrup, our can of corn syrup. And as that heats up, everything will begin to melt. The Jolly Ranchers will start to melt. You just want to try and get the candies covered in the syrup. Just start getting things moving around. But you're just going to continue to stir and this until the Jolly Ranchers are completely melted. So it does take a while for the candies, for the Jolly Ranchers to melt. Just be patient. It does get kind of goopy and gumpy. I don't know if you can see that. But just be patient. It will all melt. So what I do is I let it sit for about a minute or so, let it get heated up. And then I stir it around, trying to break it up, mush it down. You just don't want to really overwork it. As I just continue to do that, your lumpy mess will turn into a nice syrup. You'll see very shortly. Alright, so now my candy syrup, my Jolly Ranchers are all melted. See if you can see that a little better. So we're just going to set this off to the side for about 5 minutes to let that cool down before we add in our gelatin. Because if we add in our gelatin now, it'll be too hot and it can break your gelatin. That's a lot of problems that happens with it. So the next stage, I'm just going to let that cool down and we'll add in our gelatin and get that melted in, and then we'll make up the candy syrup and then get it all put together. So now that my syrup is cooled down, it's time to add in the gelatin. And I like to just do this and cut it up into smaller pieces. And then we'll just plop her all in and get that melting. Now you'll find if it's not melting, you can turn your heat on to low, put it back on the double boiler. Actually, there's probably enough heat from the water still from the double boiler to melt the gelatin if it's not hot enough right still. So you see we're starting the melting. Because we have the cold temperature and the warm, you can kind of have a separation here, but once everything comes to the same temperatures, everything will mix together. So you may find that your candy is starting to solidify, getting a little clumpy, while the gelatin is not fully melting. If that's the case, then turn your heat on to low. We just want to gently reheat that up. So you just have to be patient with this because it is going to take about 5 minutes or so for everything to come together properly. You might think, oh no, it's not working, but don't worry, just be patient. So you're going to continue to gently stir this over the low heat until everything, your Jolly Ranchers and your gelatin, have all melted together in one even uniform syrup. And there's nothing sticking to the bottom of the pot. Now once everything is melted together and everything's one uniform texture and color and there's nothing sticking to the bottom, and now if you find here, you may want to add a little bit of additional food coloring because the blue with the green, it's going to muddle that blue a little bit. So if you do want that more intense blue like your Jolly Rancher, go ahead and add a little bit more blue food coloring, which is exactly what I'm going to do here. There we go. So you just don't want to add in much, just one drop, maybe 1 to 2 drops at the max. You can see the difference there, what one drop made. Get that mixed in. So that's a much nicer blue. I don't know if you can, how well you can see that. So if I tip it too much, then I'm gonna spill it. And not like we haven't seen me do that before. So if you want to see what the color is going to look like, you just drop it onto something white there, and I'll just see what it looks like. So I'm happy with that color. Goody goody. I'm just going to set this off to the side, and we'll get our candy syrup started. Alright, so for our candy syrup portion, we're going to pour in our 1 cup of sugar, our 1/4 cup of canna syrup, our 1/4 cup of light corn syrup, and our 1/4 cup of, our 1/2 teaspoon of citric acid. And our 1/4 cup of water. And we're going to get that stirred together. So you just want to get it mixed together so the water and the sugar and the syrups are all incorporated. And then we're going to turn our heat on to medium-high. Forever the spiller. So we're going to continue to stir this until it begins to boil. And if there's any sugar sugar crystals or syrup stuck to the side, you just want to scrape that off, or get a pastry brush in hot water and just wash down the sides. Then as soon as your syrup begins to boil, you're going to stop stirring, and we're going to attach your candy thermometer, and we're going to cook the syrup to 260 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's it. Just let her go. Now, periodically, don't forget about your jelly, the gelatin, and your candy syrup. You want to go around and stir that because the candy will start to solidify around the edges if it starts to cool off too much. So every once in a while, just go around and just make sure that it's all still doing good. But don't worry, it'll get remelted once it gets we add it into the hot candy syrup as well. So my candy's almost up to temperature. Once you hit 260, you want to remove it from your heat immediately. Keep the candy thermometer attached because we want to wait until the syrup comes down to about 240 before we add in our other mixture. The best is if you have a stone or a marble surface to put it on is the best thing. It draws the heat out quickly, and it doesn't get, the surface doesn't get hot at all. If not, just put it off to the side burner and wait until your heat comes down to 240. Alright, so now my temperature has come down. Remove your candy thermometer. Grab your candy syrup, your gelatin, and your Jolly Rancher syrup. And now we're going to gently pour it into our hot candy syrup here. And it'll probably bubble up a little bit. And then you want to gently mix this and continue stirring until it's all combined. And you want to try stirring gently to incorporate as little air bubbles as you can, but we need to make sure everything gets stirred. There we go. And once you're all good there, we're going to get this poured into our bottles, or you're just going to use your dispensers, your little eyedroppers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it through a little strainer. This isn't necessary. If you've got one, great. If not, don't worry about it. So because it gets so hot, the gelatin may break a little bit. You get that little bit of whiteness. I can't really turn the pot that way for you. But if you do, you can run it through a strainer just so that doesn't get in. And if not, no worries. It'll all kind of come up to the top. I'm just going to pour this in. I don't want any left in here. Now, one thing you can do is you can fill up, if you want to know if your gelatin, if it's going to set correctly, is you can just set up 1 or 2 cavities in your candy mold, put it in the fridge, and it should start to solidify fairly quickly. Within about 5 minutes or so, it should start to set. So you'll know. If it's still really gooey and tacky, then you may have difficult setting. Leave it for 20. If after 20 minutes it's still not setting, then the gelatin has gotten too hot, or it is not, not gelatins are all the same strength, so it may not be strong enough. You can remelt, you can add that back into the pot and add in about another half a tablespoon more of gelatin. So this way it saves you a lot of time. And this has got to cool down anyway because the bottles are too hot to handle. Even if I used an oven mitt, you don't want to do it when it's super hot, because what will happen is it'll warp your bottle and it'll screw them up, so they'll end up leaking on you. So you don't want to do that. So while my bottles are, while I'm waiting for my syrup to cool, I threw a couple into the fridge, so I'm going to see how they're going to set up. Now, as it's setting, you may find your bottles, because the bubbles will start to come to the top, and I've said if any gelatin's broken, that white's going to come to the top as well. So what you can just do is get a little spoon and just scrape that top kind of skin right off of there for you. So that way it's not going to end up into your candy and make it muddled. You want to have a nice clear looking syrup. Alright, so I did check my candies. They are starting to set up nicely because the syrup is hotter. It's taking them longer. And I don't want to leave this get too cold. So, yeah. So the last thing is really you just distribute it into the molds. If it's still a little hot for your hands to hold, you can use paper towels on it, which is exactly what I'm going to do because that's too small. Just fold up some paper towel to put around it. I don't go with the oven mitts because I find that they're heavy and clunky. And that's it. Just disperse it into your molds and put them in the fridge for about 2 hours for them to fully set. And I'll come back, we'll pop these out and see what these bad boys look and taste like. I tasted the syrup and oh my god, it's so good. It tastes just like a Jolly Rancher. Now, if you find that your candies don't set, you put them in the fridge for 2 hours, they come out and they're still sticky, you can't get them out of the molds, don't panic. Put them into the freezer, let them freeze up for a couple of hours, let them get good and frozen, and then pop them out. Sometimes you have to do it one mold at a time. Take them out one at a time, pop them into a double boiler, remelt it, add another half a tablespoon to a tablespoon, probably half a tablespoon will be good enough, of bloom gelatin, and that'll fix that problem. And the same thing, if you've made them, set them up, and they're just way too jelly, they're very, very jelly, too thick, you remelt them and add in a little bit, about a quarter of a cup of liquid, and that should take care of that. Alright, so I will be back when these are set, and we'll pop them out and see how pretty they look. Alright, so welcome back here. So my gummies, I've had them sitting in the fridge just over 2 hours, and now we're going to take them out. So as you see, at first it looks like they're going to be sticky, but you just got to pull around the sides and they'll start to pull away. As long as they're doing that and you can pull them out, you're good. So you're going to just lay them on your parchment paper or stand them up if you can. Some of your candies molds are able to stand up, others won't. So I'm going to pop these guys on their sides. And then also when it's warm, especially if it's warm, I'll only take out 1 or 2 molds at a time to take them out and leave the rest in the fridge so that they don't warm up too much. So I don't have a hard time getting them out of the molds. And then I'm just going to let these little guys dry for 24 to 48 hours and they'll be good to go. Now, if they are still a little bit sticky, once you've dried them, you can toss them in a little bit of cornstarch. So you don't want to do too much. Usually what I'll do is just coat my hands in them and then run my, coat my hands in cornstarch and then just run my hands through the candy and just kind of get a very light coating on them. The other thing is you could do the same thing with oil. So if you want to just take some cooking oil or olive oil, coat your hands in them, rub it in, and then just gently go over your candies. So give it a little bit of an oil. That'll help them to stop from sticking as well. And there you've got it. Jolly Rancher Canna Gummies. Look at that baby. Whoop! Look at that. Ooh. And these guys taste so good. Oh, I tried one earlier. I don't know if I'm going to get these to drying time. Get them fully dried. They're so good. But anyway, guys, that's it for that tutorial. I'm going to be back to say goodbye, and yeah, that's about it. Oh, one thing I was going to tell you. So if you tried taking them out of the molds and they weren't coming out, they're too sticky, as I said, don't panic. Put them in the freezer, let them freeze up for a couple of hours, pop them out, put them into a double boiler, let them melt down again, and then bloom a half a tablespoon of unflavored gelatin to a quarter cup of liquid. Bloom that, add that in, and that will take care of that problem. Recast them, and you should be good. That's the awesome thing with working with gelatin and these is if there is a mistake, you can usually fix it as long as you haven't burnt it. Oh, and remember that this version of the recipe is just for plain gummies. We are not going to sugar or citric acid these. If you do, they're going to melt. I will do another version of the Jolly Ranchers, of the sour version for you. Okay, so don't add your sugar and citric acid to this. They will melt. So that is my tutorial on Canna Jolly Rancher gummies. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, as always, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments. And as I said in the beginning of the video, in case you just skipped right over it, use 4 tablespoons of gelatin versus the 3.5. It'll make that little bit of difference. They're a little bit softer than I probably would have liked. But if you like a softer gummy, go with the 3.5. But if you want that more firm gummy, go with the 4. And you'll be good to go. So check out that pretty. It's see-through-ish. It's got that clear candy look, and it tastes just like a Jolly Rancher. It's so good. So please let me know if you give this a try. I'd love to hear from you and which flavor you prefer. And once again, Thanks so much for watching. You have an awesome rest of your day.